started with a sound sharp enough to cut through the hush of a sleeping cul-de-sac, a creaking groan of metal followed by a distinct click, almost like a trigger being cocked. The garage door at 1240 Run Lane was inching upward smooth and quiet until it was halted by a voice from the shadows. Take one more step toward that car, and I'll turn you into Swiss cheese. The overhead light flicked on, revealing an 81-year-old woman in a worn denim jacket, crouched behind a red Craftsman toolbox, a double-barreled shotgun resting firmly in her grip, the barrel aimed directly at the center of the chest of the intruder. Melanie Green, vice president of the local HOA, clad in black, clutching a crowbar and staring back like she'd just seen the devil himself. But to understand how my grandmother Hazel Thompson ended up on the verge of becoming a meme-worthy vigilante, we need to rewind. This wasn't random. This was a plan, months in the making, a heist really orchestrated by someone who had no idea who she was. Messing with it began 2 months earlier when Melanie managed to wedge her way onto the HOA board. She came in with a mission, and that mission was control clipboards, tape measures, violation slips, and a bizarre infatuation with uniform beige. Everything. At first we laughed it off. She issued my father a written warning because our lawn had grown precisely 2.3 in taller than the standard height. Then came the notice about our mailbox that needed to be repainted to match the approved neutral palette. But things turned personal when Melanie caught a glimpse of our 1967 Mustang. That car had been my grandfather's prized possession, a labor of love he'd spent years restoring, polishing, babying after he passed my dad, and I took over its care. We kept it in our garage, door cracked most afternoons, so we could work under natural light. To Melanie, though, it was an eyesore incompatible with community standards. She sniffed visually disruptive, she added. She even suggested it didn't embody the spirit of modern suburbia, whatever that meant. When she showed up at our front door a week later, sunglasses perched atop her head and clipboard in hand, claiming she needed to inspect the garage, my dad almost choked on his coffee. She invoked something called the Vehicle Ordnance Clause, which none of us had ever heard of. When we denied her entry, she left in a huff. 3 days later we received a formal notice: either remove the car from the property or relocate it to an approved off-site facility. We thought it was absurd. That car had lived in that garage longer than Melanie had lived in the state. Hazel didn't laugh when she read the letter. She just quietly walked into the garage, placed her hand gently on the hood of the Mustang and murmured, "That woman's got the eyes of a thief." We brushed it off, but then strange things started happening. The backyard motion sensor would trip randomly at night. We chalked it up to raccoons at first, until we noticed the latch on the side gate had been broken, and there were fresh scuff marks on the fence like someone had climbed over. One neighbor said he saw someone walking with a flashlight near our property line around 2 a.m. Hazel's response: she moved into the garage. Not joking, she dragged out an old army cot, a wool blanket, a thermos of black coffee, and of course her Remington shotgun. "I trust this more than bylaws," she said, gesturing to the weapon. Melanie didn't back off. She doubled down, filing a new complaint claiming the Mustang had been illegally modified. She referenced a subsection of the HOA charter that didn't even exist. At the next board meeting, my dad brought a binder stuffed with receipts, proof of ownership, and a certified letter from the DMV. Melanie just smirked and told the room we were being emotional. When one board member asked if the Mustang was for sale, Hazel's eyes narrowed to slits. That was the night we installed steel-reinforced locks, a new alarm system, and hidden motion sensors linked directly to my phone. Hazel refused to budge from her post. Then at 2:38 a.m. on a Thursday, I got the alert: motion detected in the garage. I bolted upright, yanked on a hoodie, and ran down the stairs. As I burst through the back door, I heard a groaning squeal of the garage door being forced open, not electronically but pried by hand. By the time I got outside, it was already happening. Melanie was halfway through the opening, a crowbar in one hand and a forged notice in the other. She didn't see Hazel crouched behind the workbench, but Hazel saw her, and the shotgun was already leveled. "You touch that Mustang, and they'll be pulling buckshot out of your rear for weeks." Melanie froze, hands in the air, her voice a shrill squeak. "I thought someone was stealing it. I was protecting community property," she shrieked. "Hazel didn't move." She nodded toward an overturned milk crate. "Sit, Melanie." "Did the police arrive?" 7 minutes later, they found Melanie seated like a scolded toddler and Hazel standing like a statue, shotgun resting on her hip. When they checked Melanie's car parked down the block, they found gloves, zip ties, a fake HOA vehicle seizure form signed by herself, and a device used to mimic garage door signals. It was clear this wasn't a neighborhood complaint. This was a professional job. The security footage confirmed it all, and within hours of being posted online, Hazel Thompson became the internet's favorite grandma. The video of her calmly aiming her shotgun while saying, "Try me, sweetheart," turned viral. But the real storm was just starting. A retired detective named Frank Delaney reached out after recognizing Melanie from an old case. He drove across state lines to sit in our kitchen and explained that Melanie had pulled similar stunts in 2 other communities, issuing fabricated violations, arranging impound orders and disappearing just before questions got too loud. She targeted classic vehicles in particular because they fetched high prices when resold. Frank had long suspected her cousin, owner of a shady tow yard, was part of it, but he never had solid proof until now. With Frank's help we put together a case, but we didn't stop there. We decided to go public. We hosted a neighborhood rally inviting local press showcasing vintage cars, including our invited residents to share their experiences. Frank spoke. Hazel gave a speech that ended with, "We're not afraid of clipboards and khakis." The crowd went wild. Within days, a whistleblower from the HOA board president, Gregory Wallace, resigned and turned over damning emails. Melanie had manipulated the rules, coerced votes, and even bragged about how the HOA was like a vending machine with new evidence. Police raided her cousin's storage unit. They found boxes of impounded car files, fake titles, and missing VIN numbers. Dozens of stolen vehicles were tied back to HOA. Seizures charges followed. Melanie was arrested again, this time on federal charges: grand theft, conspiracy, document forgery, impersonation, and fraud. Hazel didn't gloat, but she did install a plaque above the garage that read, "Defended by Grandma." At her court trial, neighbors packed the gallery. Hazel sat front row when Melanie tried to claim she was misunderstood. Hazel calmly stood, faced the judge, and said she wasn't misunderstood, she was just underestimating the wrong family. Melanie was convicted on all counts. Her cousin, too. Wallace cooperated and avoided charges, but the entire HOA board was disbanded. Our neighborhood rewrote its rules. A new oversight committee formed, led by my dad, and Hazel meetings were full, not from fear but from pride. We even launched a monthly newsletter with real transparency. Hazel got invited to speak at town hall. She turned most down but accepted one where she told the crowd the HOA works for the people, not the other way around. For her 82nd birthday, we surprised her with a fully restored '55 Chevy Bel Air, her dream car from childhood. When we drove it into the driveway, she whispered, "Guess I'll need a bigger shotgun." She named it Liberty, and the Mustang it stayed where it belonged, safe, shining, and untouched somewhere in the city. Melanie faded into silence. She'll never serve on a board again, her name forever tied to one grandmother's refusal to back down. And when people ask how we saved our neighborhood, we tell them the truth. It wasn't the cops, it wasn't the courts, it was Hazel Thompson with her shotgun, her grit, and the kind of spine you can't teach. Thank God for her.